Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Soul Goals Podcast. I'm Dawn, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. This podcast is dedicated to bringing people's stories to light and hearing their journeys of inspiration and self-growth. But it's also about connection and knowing that you are not alone. Each week, I get the chance to sit down and talk with an amazing soul, someone I've had the blessing of either meeting or following in my life. I am so grateful for my guests. Their openness and their vulnerability, it is unmatched as we share heartfelt conversations together about both their challenges and their triumphs. I hope that you can grab some inspiration and connection from my guests and their stories. I know I certainly have with each conversation. What an honor to sit with these brave souls. Everyone has a story, folks. And every story matters. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Soul Goals. I am Dawn, and today I have the incomparable Joe Dubin. Wait, he's that way. I point the wrong way. You're a personality on television, so I should probably take some lessons from you about where the camera is.
No, you're good.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing half the time anyway, so you're good.
It's all good. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with Joe Dubin, let me just give you a quick rundown of all the amazing accolades and the things that he has done. Joe is a three-time, I believe, award-winning television sports anchor here in the Nashville market. Beyond that, he's also a popular radio personality here in our area, sports talk show host. And he actually is going to be doing color commentary for Middle Tennessee State University's football this season, which is going to be super fun. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about that opportunity. And then also, he's an author, right? He has a blog and he has, you have two books out, but I think you just released your third one this week, I think I read. Is that correct?
Correct. Came out Wednesday, yes.
Okay. We can find those on Amazon. We'll talk about the titles of those because I think they're super intriguing and kind of feed into your story a lot. Big Joe on the go. Oh, this is my favorite. Nashville's best for 22 years. Media darling.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy, but I don't even know what media darling means because if I look at you, what is media darling? That you cover all of it, which you do, and you do very well.
Well, thank you. I made up media darling like 15 years ago on my own.
Okay.
I was like, I'm media darling because what happened was I've been nominated 20 times for an Emmy Award.
Okay.
And I lost the first 11.
Okay.
And so it became a running joke, like you're the Susan Lucci of Nashville media. And it got to the point where I hope I'm like 0 for 50. It's just funny.
Yeah.
And so somebody said, well, you need to come up with some kind of award on your own. I said, how about if I meet the Nashville's media darling? And it just stuck. And so
it's totally stuck.
I've actually had somebody who I researched that and I never found any kind of contest for that. I'm like, because you won't, because I made it all up.
It's all mine. Well, I think that's
stuck great with it the whole time. So that's the genesis of media darling.
Media
just
darling.
Crazy.
Now I know the background. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So welcome, Joe. I'm so glad that you are available this afternoon to have this great conversation with us and to kind of give a little bit more depth about your career and your life and everything kind of surrounding it. So I introed you as a radio and television personality here in the Nashville area, Middle Tennessee area, basically. I'm interested to know what sparked your interest in actually pursuing that as a career initially. What made you decide, I want to be on television?
Yeah, so I went back to college. I went to college. I played football. I went to Samford University. I had way too much fun in college. And I went to like 9 spring breaks. And so I went back to college again. I'll make a long story short. I was selling credit card supplies. And we just landed a huge account. I sold this huge account. And I'll never forget the day, Dawn. I went to the bathroom. We had a huge party. And I was washing my hands, looking at myself in the mirror. And I was 26 at the time. And I saw myself at 60 sitting on a bar stool talking to somebody about what could have been in my life.
Wow.
And I went to my boss. I said, hey, I'm not feeling good. I want to take today off. He said, take a week off. I said, okay. Oh. So this is how God works in crazy, wonderful ways. I left the party at noon. I called Sanford, and it just hit me on a whim. And I said, can you fax my transcripts to this number? And Letty's like, yeah, sure. So they faxed the transcripts to my mom, her office.
Okay.
I called my mom and said, I got some big news I'm going to tell you. I'll be there in about 30 minutes. I called my brother-in-law. He worked at an overnight trucking company. I said, I need a job. He's like, yeah, I got a job 11 at night to 8 in the morning loading trucks.
Okay.
I'll take it. And then I go get the transcripts. I tell my mom, I said, I want to get my degree. I can't do this anymore.
Oh.
So I drove, Dawn. This was in November of 95. I drove to MTSU. I got to Middle Tennessee State at 4:10. I'll never forget.
4:10 a.m.
PM.
Oh, PM. Okay, you drove through. Okay.
And the admissions office closed at 4.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to drive back down. So I saw a lady getting ready to leave. I said, hey, ma'am, do you mind? She's like, no, we get off at 4. And I said, please. I said, I had this inclination, this spiritual moment where I need to re-enroll in school. Do you mind? I said, well, I'll become famous one day. I'll take care of you. So she started laughing. She says, all right. She goes, I'll let you fill the application out. She says, I'll have you know that today was the last day you could register for spring semester. And there's no exceptions.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you got to be. I had no idea, Dawn. No idea. And she let me enroll in school. I got accepted. I took 67 hours in 1 year and graduated from MTSU with a degree and basically a TV degree. So doing that, I had to do it. I wanted to be a football coach.
Okay.
And doing that, I had to do an internship at Channel 2. And I went to Channel 2 and I was like, this is a lot of fun. This isn't work. This is fun.
Yeah.
And then just a moment the good Lord says, here's the path you're going to take. And then that's how I got in TV. And so I graduated in May of 97, already had a job working there. I was making $6 an hour as an editor of the noon show, but I was in.
Yeah.
My foot was in the door.
Right.
And I could drive a news car. I could cover high school football games. And I worked my way up. And from there, I became a cameraman. I became a reporter. I became a sports reporter. And then it took off. So I took this massive leap of faith because I was tired of where I was in life. And I knew if I didn't change my life, I knew where the path was going.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to live that life. I don't want to live a life of what could have been. I wanted to live a life of, my God, look at this. And then, so that's what I did. And, people these days don't take enough risk and leap of faith. Yeah. And have that leap of faith. And so I did. And that's how I stayed in TV. And basically I was too ugly to get rid of. And I lasted in TV. They tried to change me, Dawn, from shaving my goatee to wearing different suits to toupees, everything. I said, I'm not changing. Yeah. I'm not. I am beautifully made in the eyes of God. And I end up believing that. I was like, this is who I am. Trust me, I'm by far not perfect. I'm extremely flawed, but I worked my tail off and I was refused to be told no. And so I kept it in TV and kept the job for a long time, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you did a plethora. You were willing to dig in and do whatever was called of you and was asked of you to be able to get to that point.
Well, somebody said, when I started, says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be on TV. I want to be a sports anchor. And he's like, you know what? There's only one sports anchor, but there's a cameraman, there's a producer, there's a director, there's a technical director, there's a line producer, there's all these different jobs. So I learned how to do every single job so that if I lost my job on air, I'm going to be a cameraman. If I'm going to be a cameraman, I'm going to be a producer. I learned every job so they couldn't get rid of me. And I know it sounds pompous, but it works. So I could do every single job if called upon and have when I worked in television, and it really benefited me well for knowing all those jobs.
Yeah, I don't think that sounds pompous. I think that just sounds prepared. I think you were at a place where you had to look out and go, all right, I have decisions to make. No one's going to do it but me. So if I don't dig in and do it, then I'm out of luck.
Well, there was a popular theme on Instagram this past summer about motivational, this thing of, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's going to tell you to get off your butt. Nobody's going to tell you to write that book. Nobody's going to tell you to go to the gym, but you. I mean, you're not going to knock, your husband, Pat's not going to knock on my door. Hey, let's go work out today. Nobody's going to do that.
Right.
So you got to do it yourself. And I tell people all the time, get off your butt. Yeah. The hardest part, Dawn, you know this well, the hardest part is walking into the gym. Yes. After that, it's easy.
Yes.
It's getting there is the hard part. But that's anything with life. Is like, I've been wanting to write a book for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So last year I was working this convention downtown Nashville, and they had a speaker who was terrible. And I asked one organizer, I said, why do you have the speaker? He was really bad. And he said, well, he's written a book and we read the book. We liked the book. So, in order to, be a speaker, you got to write a book. I went home 2 days later and wrote my first book.
Yes.
And already had a bunch of articles anyway that I've written for a newspaper here in town. And so I just combined them, went online, found how to do it yourself on Kindle and put a book out. And the book did far exceeded any. I thought I'd sell 5 copies all to my brother. And it did really well and it took off. And I was like, thank you, Lord. And then, but the thing was, just get off your butt and do it and do something.
Yeah.
And it worked well. Look, when I went back to MTSU, my very first day there was an ice storm, right?
Oh, okay.
So school was canceled, had to come back the next day. So I'm walking on campus and I hit an ice patch and I fall face forward on my face.
On your first day?
I mean, it was a bad fall. Yeah. And people were laughing at me. Oh. But what's weird, at that moment, Dawn, in my life, I knew I was going to be okay because of 2 things. The first thing was I'd come so far since I quit my other job, loading trucks. I was in school getting towards my goal. Mm-hmm. So I knew I was okay. I'd done so much in a short period of time, but I fell forward, right? So if you're going to fall forward. So I was still falling forward. I was still going forward towards my goal. And I got up, battered and bruised. I was like, I'll be fine. And I never looked back from that moment. It's weird, but that's how it worked in my mind and worked out fine.
Well, it stuck with you. So that's a really great memory for you to be able to call back up when you're having a rough day or having a rough week or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that motivation that you talked about, because there you are at this party. You're 26 years old. The motivation to do that, where do you think that really came from? Like I know you said you looked in the mirror and you're like, I see myself at 60 years old and I didn't like what I saw.
Right.
But you talked about motivation and just getting up and doing it. So I would feel like there's a lot of people that would look at that and say, I don't like what I see, but I feel powerless to change it. Where do you think that power for you to actually take that first step came from?
I think it was always inside of me because I always wanted to do better and do more. And I saw how the 8-to-5 world just really beat my mother down. I mean, I grew up with a single mom who was my hero, my legend. And I saw how 8-to-5 beat her down. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this job. I can't do the 8-to-5. God bless you if you can, man. All power to you. But I couldn't do it. And I knew then if I didn't make the change, then I would never make the change. And I'd be stuck doing that and then be that guy on the bar stool of like, I could have done this. I could have done that. And it wasn't going to be there. I knew I had to make a change then. And, it was ambitious. It was a little bit crazy. It was a little bit, what are you doing? But I felt in my soul a lot of prayer that I needed to do this.
Yeah.
And, all too often I read, if it comes from God, it's perfect. If it does not come from God, there's all kind of questions and doubts and fears. At not one moment did I have any fear or doubt. It was weird. So it's called a massive God wink, I think.
Oh, I love that.
And took me to that level where I needed to, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail on my terms.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a little bit of the God wink. I love that term, by the way. That's awesome. But there's also your elbow grease in there, like your motivation that you have to follow through with this. So in thinking about that, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that think, well, if it's supposed to be God's going to make it happen. Where's your thought process on that? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that they'll go into it and say, I'm going to do what God wants me to do, but then they don't follow up with it. They don't listen or they don't see that wink like you did. How do you tune into hearing that, seeing that, feeling that? Like, what do you have? Is it just innate in you? Like you said, it's born in you?
Great question.
Do you feel like people can learn that?
Yeah. My favorite Bible verse is Luke 11:9. It's ask, seek, and knock. And all too often I'd have prayers like, Lord, help me make it through the day, or a clear path for me. And I was talking to a guy I used to work with, a wonderful guy. He's like, your prayers need to be bold. Your life needs to be bold. Your ambitions need to be bold.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, there's a fine line between bold and prideful and greedy. He's like, there is. He goes, but if you truly want to improve your life and you're not doing it for those reasons of being pride to yourself and glory to yourself, you'll never make it. But if you think God along this path and really want to improve your life and ask bold prayers and act on bold prayers and do things. So I took ask, seek, and knock. And that's when I go talk, thank the Lord, I get to talk to a lot of people, groups, civic groups, schools. And I give the speech of the guy traveling across the desert with his family. He's hungry and he sees a light on a house. He knocks on the door. He keeps knocking on the door, and finally the homeowner comes down and says, look, the only reason I'm opening this door is because you won't stop knocking.
Yeah.
And I tell people, never stop knocking.
Yes.
You have everything you need to succeed is inside of you. You don't need to read a book.
Yeah.
You don't even go to college unless you want to.
Right.
But everything you need to succeed is inside of you. You just got to look inside. You got to believe in yourself at some point that you have this gift that you can bring out and do it. And once you find that gift, well, nothing stop you. So with me, I knew being creative, being funny, being different was a gift, and to act upon it and somehow, some way do that and go forward that way. And it was just one of those things where you got to believe in yourself, because if you don't, I put it this way, I got grief years ago for liking my own Facebook posts, right?
Okay.
People are like, how do you like your own Facebook post? And I said, well, if I don't like it, how am I supposed to think you like it?
Yeah.
So it became a running joke. So it's one of those things where you just got to believe in yourself, man. You got to do it at all counts. And my thing was, I knew that passion was inside of me, but I tell people all the time, very simple phrase, day one or one day, right? We talk about one day I'm going to do this. Why not make it day one of this new journey in your life? Day one of going to the gym, day one of writing your book, day one of pinning your thoughts, day one of, walking for 30 minutes.
Yes.
Do the day one.
Yes.
Stop doing the one day. It drives me crazy. So I think it was always inside of me. I just had to pull it out.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned in what you just said too, that you were different, right? You were creative and you brought something to this world that other people couldn't. Just like everybody brings something to the world that you couldn't. Your neighbor brings something to the world that you can't. So being able to tap into that. And I love what the gentleman told you about, be bold with your prayers, be bold with your going after it. Right. And that pride is believing in yourself and understanding and knowing that you have a gift by just being who you are.
I totally agree. And that's the phrase, fortune favors the bold. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything you ask for, you're going to get.
Right.
And it should not be that way, because then we would ask for the moon and the stars constantly and not be appreciative of what we've got. So I think a lot of heartache comes along that way. There are jobs that I wanted that I didn't get that really, bugged me and took me down. When I first started Channel 2, I wanted to be on sports anchor so bad. I sent out resume tapes all over the country. I got one guy who wrote back to me and said, love your passion, don't like your look. And I was so appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Because
okay, great.
It was I kept getting nothing back from anybody. I get nothing back from these resume tapes. Here's somebody who's like, all right, I love your, it's like, all right, he likes my energy. Let's work on my energy. I don't care about my look. Let's keep my energy going. And that's what I did. I kept the energy part of that going and the passionate part about it going, because I can control that. Yeah. And so I took those two things and ran with it and kind of made my own path, and very appreciative of what we've gotten, of what I've been able to accomplish. But I mean, there's been hard times. I've been in dark places. We'll get into that a little bit later on. I mean, it's been a rough year for me mentally. But I think we fight a battle every day, and we just keep fighting and find the good in life. I think it helps out more than we could ever possibly imagine.
Right. When you can tap into the good stuff, when you're in the middle of the dark stuff, and that's when you're in the weeds, it's hard to see outside of them. So hard to see outside of them. Let me ask you, what, on that same kind of vein, if you will, what was your most challenging time up to this point in your career? Like, if you could pinpoint, because I feel like you have so many specific memories that are very invaluable teachers and very invaluable lessons to where you are now. And I feel like that challenging time is probably going to be something that's going to be just that same kind of situation.
I've never had a boss when I worked in TV that liked me. So I was always fighting that battle of they like me. And finally came to the point of like, I don't care. I'm going to do myself. When I was at Channel 4, I had a really, really bad boss. And, Channel 4's lost half their talent pool since I left 2 years ago. People got tired of it, and he eventually moved on. He was an awful boss and didn't appreciate me and a lot of other people that worked there. And it was a challenge because I was in his office every day getting yelled at, and finally get to the point of, all right, what did I do wrong today? And it was difficult because I was, I'm hearing from the community, hear from people that, example, during COVID, he came to me and said, my boss did, and said, what do you want to do COVID wise? And I said, I want to go out and tell the stories. I got tired of telling the stories of how you got COVID, your dad got COVID, your uncle died from COVID, you lost your business from COVID. While I was out in the field, I would hear so many great stories of how the neighborhood came together for a bake sale so you could pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
Or the neighborhood came together for a car wash so your daughter's medical bills could be, or whatever. And these great stories are being told. And my boss said to me, those are great, Joe, but nobody cares.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, all right. So he's like, I need you to do, more basically death and destruction. And I didn't do it. And he hated me because I'd go and I'd tell stories. There was a sandwich shop in Murfreesboro who mortgaged their house to build this dream. COVID hits and they don't know what we're doing. And we did a live remote one morning on TV, and some law firm in Nashville saw it and ended up buying like 500 sandwiches from him. And they were able to pay their employees and pay the mortgage on the business.
Yeah.
And these great stories. So the challenge for me had always been consultants who look at everything through a broad brush, or paint the world in a broad brush, and don't look what's happening in the backyards of things in the community. And it drove me crazy because I knew what I was doing was right. It was really difficult to get through this. Our consultant at Channel 4 lived in Denver. So he can't pick Gallatin out on a map or Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what works in Denver doesn't work here. So those were challenges, but those are life isn't easy, but there are different challenges that happen. So I found a way to work, if you come upon this big mountain and you can't go over the mountain, well, you go around the mountain, right? Yeah. And try to go through the mountain, or you find a different route. So that was always me. It's like, I'm going to find a way to get this done regardless, instead of going home like, oh, I didn't get this done or that done today. So the challenges were numerous, but challenges are opportunities, and opportunities are fantastic.
Yes. And you're tenacious with it too, right? You're very tenacious.
You have to be. Yeah. That's how going back to the point. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to get it done. And I just know, I believe in my heart and soul what was right, what was correct. And I was going to fight tooth and nail to get through that and make it happen. And that's what we did.
Yeah, for sure. I am interested to know also that the first time you ever were on camera, because that was your goal when you went that direction. How was that the first time you were in front of the camera?
So it was, I'll never forget, we did a thing. So I was the Waffle House in Nashville. We're doing a thing with the Waffle House about how funny it is, the Waffle House. The Waffle House we're going to was the most, they made the most money in a Waffle House in America. It was one on City Drive over there. And I'll never forget, Dawn, we went to the commercial break, and Neil Lawrence said, up next, we got a fun segment for you with something you're going to like, you're going to enjoy. And it hit me like, God, I should just run, because now my dream's coming true. I should be out of here. This is not happening.
Wow.
And another voice said, this is what you work for. Just go be yourself. And it did. And that voice overtook the other voice, and it stood with it. And it was just fantastic. Butterflies. I still get butterflies to this day. And I don't think if you don't get butterflies, then you're missing why you got to where you are. Yeah, and it was just a lot of fun. And from there, it just took off, and done some crazy, wonderful, fun things that, that if I had not looked at myself in the mirror that day in the bathroom, never would have happened. So it's really butterflies, that moment of realization you made it, per se, and that you weren't going to look back. And that's exactly what I did.
And knowing that you made it, this is, I am realizing a really strong belief and a goal that I had set for myself, and the desire that I really wanted. And I think it's interesting, not running from it, because it's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm actualizing this situation now.
Right. Yeah. So you realize in that moment, it's like, because it seems only like 15 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. It was August 25th, 2023. I'll never forget.
Oh, you're in the date.
You're like, all right, this is what you fought for. This is what you built everything around. Now go. And I always tell people, if you don't have passion for what you're doing, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. It's not going to work. So I had passion for what I was doing. And I take that, I'll write on my pads. I've got pads, notebooks everywhere. I write passion throughout as my word, just to remind myself, keep the passion going, because all too often we lose that passion. But if you keep it going, keep believing the passion, then you've got it, and nobody's going to stop you. And so that first day, day one, right? Day one turned into day 2 to day 3, and 20 years later, it's been a wild ride, but it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's amazing. Would you say that that was your most memorable time on camera, or is there another one that stands out?
No, I was doing Bonnaroo one day, and there was a traffic backup, and we were interviewing. I talked to this one guy off camera. I said, man, so what's the problem? He said, the problem is they've only one exit in there, and yada, yada. So I'm going to talk to you on TV. He's like, yeah, that's fine, So I go on TV, and I said, hey, man, we're talking to, I'll never forget, he was from Virginia. And I said, hey, what have you been? I'll tell you what the blanking problem is. And he says the F word on TV. And at that moment, I was like, oh, man. But it was early in the morning, so nobody really heard it.
Okay, good.
So it worked out for the best. That stands out, I'm like, this Predators going to the Stanley Cup, the election of 2000, when Al Gore was doing his election in town. That was being part of that. It's not only been sports. There's been a lot of news stuff that's going on. Unfortunately, there's been, the Christmas bombing downtown was bad. I wasn't working in news when the Covenant shooting happened, and things like that just break your heart. There's a lot of good and the bad of working in news, and those are some of the bad things you tend to remember, which you really don't like. The tornado that came through, a couple of years ago. The flood probably in 2010 was the one, because nobody predicted the flood. And just seeing the devastation. And I'll tell you a quick story about that was we got word they were evacuating the Opryland Hotel during the flood. It was May 2nd, 2010. Never forget. So I found out they're evacuating everybody at the hotel to McGavick High School. So we go to McGavick High School. We got all these people. I was live on CNN. I mean, it was crazy. And so the bus comes and drops all these people off at CNN. Well, meanwhile, that weekend at Opryland Hotel, they were having a spy conference. It wasn't called a spy conference, but it was called like a new technology warfare conference. And there was a lot of really valuable spy equipment at the Opryland Hotel that was left behind. So I'm showing, and I've written about this, and it's been it's been documented and approved and verified. So I showed these people getting off the bus. Well, about 20 minutes later, I get a phone. 20 minutes later, after doing this big hit, it's on CNN. My phone rings. It was a Washington, D.C. number. I'm like, this is odd. Yeah. And I look at it, and the guy says, hey, I understand that you're Joe Dubin, you're a reporter. I said, yeah, I am. He's like, I need you to not show people anymore. We have some very important people in that gymnasium that are important to the government. You can't show.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, and if you do it again, this is an international matter. And I thought, whatever. And I hang up on him.
No. Joe.
Then the TV station calls me and says, hey, we just got a phone call. It's been verified.
Yeah.
So it was really weird. So during all this, what I was told, Fort Campbell sends these black ops in to go into meanwhile, the hotel's being flooded, right? For the Cumberland River. And they go in and they get all the spy equipment out of Opryland Hotel. Opryland Hotel denies it, but the next day at a press conference, it was asked and it was verified. I'll never forget that because it was just weird.
Gosh.
Getting a call from the government.
Right.
And not to show certain people because they're high-ranking Department of Defense people that should not be on TV. And it was just, that kind of stands out more than anything else that I've done. Sports things, but that moment of the flood in the military, I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
ever.
No, that's a huge thing. That's a massive thing. You talked about like the devastation and reporting on the things that are challenging and the hardships and the trauma and the stuff that you have to see as a reporter, that you have to report the good and the bad. I mean, that's kind of that job. How do you deliver the information that is not that positive, feel-good story with a way that still thinks about the people as a whole? Because as I'm listening to you, you're such a positive person. You really have a very good lens on what it is that you believe about yourself, about your faith. So I guess I'm interested to know your take on how you, as a reporter, because I know there's a lot of reporters out there that don't do that, and I feel like there's a miss there.
Yeah, you have to be, first thing, be honest and don't make it about yourself.
Okay.
And those two things were, and some sort of compassion, but don't make it about yourself. Mm-hmm. There was a stabbing at a theater in Antioch in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at Channel 4 that day. It happened at 1:00. And the guy took hostages in a Antioch theater. And my boss said, hey, we got breaking news. We need you on the desk. I was like, what's going on? And it was a theater in Antioch. But I knew the back roads. I knew how to avoid things. I knew it was Baker Hollow Mall. So I went on the air for about 30 minutes. And I just talked like, hey, here's what we know. Avoid the situation. Take these roads. And at some point, your compassion kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't make it like, I and me and I and me. You just to be honest with them and care about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I lead that to say later that afternoon, we all ended up going out to the scene and the officers killed, death caught by suicide or whatever it is, where the guy wanted to die. And
yeah.
So during all that, there was all these reporters in different stations wanted to get together and take a selfie. Like, hey, we're never in one place at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And I said, God, do not do this. Well, we're never here together. I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Well, I said, exactly. There's a stabbing, cop shot a guy.
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
Don't make yourself the story.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, don't do this. Tell the story. It doesn't have to be about you. Tell what's going on, the facts. So I stood by those. Be honest and don't make it about yourself. And I'll get you through about probably 99% of everything in life.
You're
right?
True. Yeah, so
be
true.
honest. Don't make it about yourself.
Yeah.
It's hard because there's a lot of egos in television.
Yeah.
And you just got to remind yourself, like, you're not one of them. It's not about you. This is your community, and care about it and make sure you don't be the story when you don't need to be the story.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's part of who you are. And I would wager to bet that your upbringing probably instilled some of that moral compass in you as well. Correct?
Well, it did. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I got lost in sports and I had some fantastic friends, and I had a wonderful mother who never quit and gave me everything that she could. But also, with friends are so valuable. Sports is one way where I don't care how much money, if your best friend, he's got his mom and dad to make a lot of money. Playing sports, you're all equal.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time where sports was just was being part of a team and being great, and great football teams at McGavick High School formed great friendships and bonds that last to this day. And but at the end of the day, I did not want to embarrass my mom.
Okay.
And that was the bottom line. And I remember a coach telling me years ago, whatever you do in life, don't embarrass your mother. And I was like, you know what? That's strong. And I tell my son to this day, I go, whatever you do, I can handle it, but don't embarrass your mom, no matter what.
Oh.
So I tell my son that all the time. Just don't embarrass your mom. And once you live by those, kind of that saying, truly live by it, and I think you'll do okay.
Yeah. I know earlier you talked about your mom just briefly, about her being a very your role model, your hero, kind of your go-to as a single parent household. Obviously that's shaped you into who you are today because that was her hand in raising you. Tell me a little bit about that relationship, if you could.
Well, I got an older brother and sister, but they were gone by the time. My brother's 11 years older. My sister's 6 years older. She got married and she was gone early. So it was just me and my mom and my dad. I didn't talk to my dad for, I guess, 34 years before he died. I didn't talk to him.
Oh, wow.
Nothing, no relationship.
Yeah.
And, my brother and sister, my half brother and half sister, same mom, different dad. So it was just her and I. And, she came to all the games. She did. I remember I played a football game one time. She couldn't make it. She had a work thing where I cracked my sternum. I got hit really hard in a football game in college. I thought I was going to die.
Oh.
Went to the hospital, and there she is. She drove 10 hours to be in the hospital, make sure I wasn't going to die, but I was in pain. But it was that commitment, that dedication that I saw that, from her that I was like, I always tell people, what if my mom wanted to quit the same way my dad quit?
Oh, wow.
I'd be in a foster home. What if she said, you know what? He gets to walk out on this. Why can't I? And so she was so strong and so just a badass.
Yeah.
And so I took that to with my own kids. It's like, no matter what, you may get mad at me. You may not like me in the moment, but I'm always going to be there. No matter what, I'm always going to be there, and we'll do this together. And so that was kind of my attitude with my mom. And, I thank God for her every day. I mean, in the last couple of years of her life where she battled Alzheimer's so bad, and it was such a cruel disease.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, during the last part, I was like, Lord, take her. This is not my mom. Anyway, that's a whole story.
Yeah.
But I told her, it's at her funeral, I gave a quick eulogy, and I said, you know what? I never thanked her my whole life. She was the one that taught me how to tie my shoes. She was in the backyard and run plays with me, would catch the ball. I mean, it's all this stuff. And it was but I never thanked her.
Okay.
It's weird.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine says, well, you thank her about how you're raising your kids today. And I was like,
Sure.
I guess so, but I don't know. So I'm quick to thank people now of things that go on.
Yeah.
Because it's simple. I mean, I thank you means the world.
Yes.
So she was everything. And she passed away at 72. I get angry a little bit. And, I want her to see my kids grow up.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And I was thankful for the time I had with her.
Yeah. Do you feel that there was anything missing? Or you look back at your childhood and go, I'm good?
No, nothing. I didn't know anything but love and everything else. I mean, I had a wonderful childhood. I mean, it was high school experience was fantastic. It was, I don't know. I couldn't have, no, it's a great question. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing I could have wanted more in life than I had growing up. It was, I mean, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, just her and I, but didn't define who I was or anything like that. And, your friends got, their parents are married, but the only thing I knew was her and I. And that's all I knew. And so growing up and plotting my way through life, I just knew that she was always there and nothing, I never wanted for anything. I was like, this is how it should be.
Yeah. It's what you knew. And I think it knowing what you know, that this is my experience, not knowing anything different, it's very freeing and it's very, it's you. It's your story.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing is like, I'd have friends who would get, their dad would buy a 1984 Camaro, but it's weird, Dawn. It was like, man, let's go ride in your car. It was not like, I want that car or why don't I have that car? It was just, it's weird. And it's part of the books that I wrote is that I can't be successful unless you're successful. I can't compare myself to you. I want you to be successful. And so if my friends had a new car, I had a new car with you. And so that's the way I looked at life. That's the way a lot of us looked at life back then. It's like, hey, you got a car, let's go ride now. So it was never one of, I want this or I want that. It was just appreciative of what I did have. And I was so thankful.
Do you feel like that's the thing that's missing today? I mean, I think that there's a lot of competition. Do you think that there's jealousy, I guess, or envy for what others have and for what you may not have?
What's that word? Comparison is the thief of joy?
Of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah.
So, I mean, I see people, I wish I had that. I wish I did that. Or I mean, stop. Be grateful for what you have and make the most out of it. I mean, I just don't, if growing up, if a girl didn't want to go out with you because you didn't have the latest car, oh, well, just go on down the road, something else. So don't let that stuff define you or bog you down in life and don't worry about it. And just try to do the best you can with what you have given. And then when you get older, go out and make your way and accomplish what you want to. You have everything inside of you. You need to succeed. Just got to get off your butt and do it. And so growing up, I think that I'd hate to be a kid today. I mean, I feel bad for my son.
Yeah.
I mean, our kids are the same age. And I just, and now if you didn't get invited to a party back in the day, you didn't hear about it. Now it's all
Pat and I were just having this conversation yesterday. He'd said the exact same thing. Like this day and age, you have knowledge about what everybody's doing, who they're with, where they're at. And it's not a representation of real life. It's not. And knowing what someone else is doing is just not.
That's the thing is like, social media is great for contacting and seeing people and talking to people and keeping up with people. But I mean, just don't let it define you and do all that things that just really make it bad for your mind. And that's the deal. It's like, if you go to a party now, it's like, well, these 5 people at the party, I didn't get invited.
Yeah.
And back in our time, it's kind of like, you never knew about it. You didn't care.
Yeah. You just didn't care.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh. So I want to go a little bit deeper into your writing because you're saying, gosh, like you're just, if I could take my microphone and just drop it, like there's so many little truth bombs that you're saying here. Is that what you formulate your writing on in your books and your blogs and your, and the books that you've written so far from your experience?
So I started to blog about 10 years ago, just something to do, thoughts put down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would send my articles to Main Street Media and I say, hey, I don't want any money, just run them in your papers. And they just took off from there. So I've written hundreds of articles. And so some have been on retrospectives of growing up, of fun moments, of memories, of events that happened, places that we went to, experiences that we had that we all related to. And so I condensed them into a book. Or the articles, so I'm gonna write the book. So my first book is kind of Create the Chaos, about obstacles in your life that you get. And in the midst of chaos are wonderful opportunities. And so I read some famous Stoic who wrote about, the chaos in our life creates these opportunities to make things happen. And so I was like, this is great. And it goes back to, I was playing a football game in college and I got I looked up to find the football. And I got double teamed about 30 yards down the field. An awful play.
Okay. And
I came back to the sideline. The coach was like, what happened? I said, I looked up for the ball and I didn't see it. He's like, next time, collapse, create chaos. So they have to go around you or they have to know where you are. And I always stood in the back of my mind. I'm like, create chaos. Always got to know where you are. So chaos can be a wonderful thing if you control it.
Right.
When I didn't get a job in TV, what did I do? I didn't sulk. I started doing more writing. I started, honing in on my photography skills. I created this chaos this wonderful chaos that you had to kind of recognize me at some point. And so I tell people, if you get knocked down or don't get your way, keep grinding, go take acting classes, go take poetry classes, just do something, create this chaos in your life and don't be told no. Yeah. And so that's where the first book came from, was just stories of doing things. And a lot of time, Dawn, is that we look back with so much regret that it overtakes us. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was coming back from my son's football game in Chattanooga, and it was like a 2.5 hour drive on a Friday night. And so I had in my car, you could flip a dial. And I said, all right, wherever it lands on, I'm going to listen to the station the whole way home. Because this little game is playing in my head, right?
Okay.
So it's in my first book. So I flip it. It lands on the Billy Graham channel on Sirius XM. I had channel 450. I had no idea that channel existed.
Yes.
And the theme in the first minute of listening to him, the theme of his speech was, you can't unscramble eggs.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? He's like, no matter what the mistakes you've made in the past, no matter how bad it is, you can't go back and change it, right? Learn from it.
Yeah.
You can't unscramble eggs. And I was like, man. So the whole way home, I was going like 40 miles an hour, just gripping the wheel, listening to this Billy Graham speech about regret. That thing is, why is your mirror in the front of your car bigger than your rear view mirror? Because stop looking back. And, we all make mistakes. We have massive regrets. Just learn from them and try not to do those again. Yeah. And go forward. And that was a lesson. I was like, God, I had no idea that channel existed. Right. I've never flipped my dial in my car before. Yeah. And it landed there. I was like, God's telling me something.
There's so many of those. Gosh, so many of those moments for you, Joe. I think they're really, everywhere. Yeah. And I love that you hang on to them. And when you are speaking about them, it is from that place of passion. It is from that place of drive and that understanding and that knowing that this is where I'm at because this is what my experience has been. I think that's great.
Yeah. That's the thing is that, I'm flawed. You're flawed. Everybody's flawed, and we spend all too often in our minds thinking back. I mean, I go back all the time. Like, God, I should have worked harder in high school. I'd have had this opportunity. I should have done this. And I wouldn't have done that. And it drives you crazy. But as long as you kind of put those behind and forgive yourself, which is tough to do. Yes. It's really tough to forgive yourself because you're your own biggest critic. Yes. And it's a battle every day, but it's a thing where you eventually have to forgive yourself and go forward and just try not to do that again in your life.
Yeah. You can't unscramble eggs. I'm going to check that. Yeah. That's there. That's such a great saying. That's a great piece right there. I do kind of want to jump back because you said something that kind of made me bring up a thought in my head. you talk about creating the chaos. And if this isn't working, then create something else around it. When do you feel that it's important for you to get honed in specifically on that goal? Or do you feel like all those other pieces, because I know a lot of times people will say, oh, you've got too much going on and you're not opening up space enough for your goal to actually self-actualize what it is that you're going for. So how do you know when you're running from what the goal is, or you're not motivated to be direct to get to that goal, that you're creating, maybe you're creating chaos that is not helpful to get to where you want to be?
That's like, gosh, that might be the best question I've ever been posed.
Oh, wow.
I know what works and I know what doesn't work.
Okay.
And I think I've had enough experience to know that, and bad choices I've made, bad ideas I've had, things that don't work out. And I think it goes back to earlier, I think if it comes from God in your life and it's perfect without any questions, then and it becomes a lot of consternation, a lot of doubt, a lot of that it's not right for you. And so I knew early on that I wanted to be in TV. I know I wanted to write. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to be different. I did not want to be average. If you want to be average, that's fine. I got no problem with it. That's not me.
Yeah.
I want to be ambitious. So you find the goals and things that help you get to that next level in your life, wherever they may be.
Yes.
But, they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Take that first step, find that first step, find out what it is you want to do and go for it. I mean, I saw a thing the other day where a guy was like, I didn't graduate college till I was 47. I didn't write my first book till I was 57. I didn't do this till I was 67. I'm turning 70 this year. I'm looking forward to it. It takes a while. I mean, we make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
And I saw a thing last night from Michael Jordan. It was great. It's like, I've missed 60% of my basketball shots. I've missed 47 game-winning shots. I was only 70% good at this. And because I failed at all that, that's why I succeeded.
Yes.
And I was like, I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You just keep going on and what people tell you. You keep just grinding in the Rocky line. You get knocked down, but can you get back up? Can you get back up? And that's the thing. Keep back up and keep going. And I think you got to believe in yourself. If you don't, I'm not going to believe in you.
Yeah.
So all those have to go together, and you'll find your path, and you'll know it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And with me, it came with a lot of prayer and a lot of believing in myself, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've seen the alternate, when you don't believe in yourself, you don't do it, nothing changes.
Yeah, you
simple.
Stay the same. The pain of change is sometimes worse than the pain of staying the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that that brings up another point too. You have to really trust that you're doing right by yourself and not crossing that pride line. I think that was really interesting too, because I think there are certain people that think, oh, well, I don't want to step on blah, blah, blah's toes. I don't want to put myself out there too much because I don't want somebody to think. It's dropping that, letting go of that. I don't care what other people think about what my process is, and just doing your process so that you can be a bigger person for the community and serve your role that you're supposed to be serving. So,
well, think about what you just said. If you start those doubts, I don't want to do this because it might be that, and I don't want to do this because this might happen. Well, you're already defeated. That old phrase of whether you think you can or can't, you're correct. And it took me years to figure out what the hell does that mean.
Yeah.
And it was and I told a guy that this morning who was worried about something. I said, you'd be shocked in your life how many people don't think about you or what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
You'd be shocked.
Yeah.
You're all worried about somebody's thinking about you. You'd be floored.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't say this in a bad way, how little people think about what you're doing.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a self-absorption thing. We put a lot of context and a lot of clout into, we give our power away in that capacity, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So again, believe in yourself and you'll get it done.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to get away from this conversation without having dialogue about your education and your belief and your fire about helping men's mental health and the crisis that is there that doesn't get talked about and doesn't get brought to the surface, because as men, we're not, now you're not supposed to be affected. Right. You're not supposed to be depressed. You're not supposed to be struggling. I mean, it's really interesting the roles that we've found in this society about what men are supposed to be and what women are supposed to be and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I know you've written about this on your blog a couple different times, and you've even gone so far as to talk about, hey, I don't know you, but if you need help, reach out and I'll help you find help. And that's very profound.
Yeah. Right. So I've been to 9 funerals this year.
Oh,
And 4 of those were by suicide, all men over 40 years old.
wow.
And it got to the point where this has got to stop. And in talking to the people around the ones that passed away, they felt they had no hope.
Okay.
And once you lose hope and you believe that, you're done.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we always have hope.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing was very simple and bluntly, go talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did. I mean, I'm talking to someone. My mother passed away 12 years ago. I'm just now dealing with that grief. It's weird.
Yeah.
Grief is weird. Emotions are weird. So it was a thing of like, I had to go. I can't tell you to go talk to somebody if I'm not doing that. So I wrote it, Dawn, and I put my email and I said, hey, reach out to me. We'll get you somewhere because so I had 14 men reach out.
Wow.
And got them all into help. And I've heard back from, and that number's gone up, but the initial was 14.
Yeah.
So I heard back from 13 of them, all anonymous. I'll never give their names up ever. And one person did not. And that drove me crazy. I'll get to him in just a moment.
Okay.
But the 13 were, so one guy said, hey, I went and saw a therapist. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
And I sat at my computer, I read his email, Dawn, and I said, and it hit me. I said, all right, now we walk together.
Yeah.
Now we walk together on this journey. I'm always going to be there for you. And that was my next story. It's like, now we walk together.
Mm-hmm.
And, this journey together. And I look at it this way, that those were 14 men, 14 fathers, 14 brothers, 14 sons who were at dinner that night, who didn't take their own lives. And so one guy wrote me, he said, hey, I've done so much bad that God will never forgive me. And it's weird, Dawn, I had no reply to it. I sat up all night and I got on my computer at 3:00 in the morning and I wrote a story called God Doesn't Keep Score. And it just flowed from me. And I wrote that out and had some more men reach out to me. And it's like, God doesn't keep score. Can you imagine if God kept score? Right? Think about that.
It's mind-boggling.
If he kept score, we would all lose.
For sure.
We would all lose so badly, it would be mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
But the God we love and serve doesn't keep score.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just one of the things that kept going. And it became a mission. It's still a mission for me to do this. So go back to the one guy I haven't heard from.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're up to over 20-something men have gotten help, but I have not heard back from this one guy beyond the first email that we sent. And so I was laying in bed one night, going through reels, and I found the guy, this comedian who was an atheist. He found the grace of God, and he was an alcoholic, was a bad man. And he said, I've traveled millions of miles around this earth as a comedian, but the longest journey I ever took was from standing to kneeling. And I got out of bed and I was shaking. I was like, oh my gosh, this is powerful. So I sent it to him. I wrote it, it's that take that leap of, take that journey, drop to your knees and get forgiveness and get grace and ask for everything. You're not perfect. And only one perfect person walked this earth. And we're never going to be perfect, but we strive to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then, so that was the thing. So the mental health thing took off, but through it all, at the end of this, in late July, I had a friend I talked to 2 days before, killed himself. And it really wrecked me that he did. I was mad. I'm mad at him, Dawn. I'm really mad at him.
Yeah.
I talked to him and I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at him. He left behind a wife and 3 girls, and I'm mad. And I shouldn't be mad, but I'm mad. I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he was going through. I mean, I don't know how bad it is in your life that you have to pull that trigger. I've been there. I mean, I've had those thoughts. A lot of us have had those thoughts. And,
right.
you get close. And I've had this year's been tough on me with everything that's going on.
Yes.
And you just got to find a way and just figure it out, man.
Yeah.
And know that your presence on earth will be missed more than you ever imagined. So if you take your life, and I'm mad at, and I'll be mad at him for a while.
Yeah.
For him doing that, he left behind a lot of good people. He said, and it's tough.
Yeah.
So I'll keep fighting this. I sign off our radio show every day that if you want to talk, we love you. You're here. We need you here.
Yeah.
Feel like you talked a moment. You can find me on social media. I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
I've talked to a ton of people, and I'm not an expert. I am not a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert. I'm nowhere near, but I know where to send you.
Yes.
I know where to get you going. And that's the deal. Is like, we'll walk together on this. And that's what I want to do.
And you're supportive. I think that's kind of the biggest thing for people to get to that point where they have just decided there is no hope. I can't do this anymore. It's not that they don't have the support around them. It's just they don't feel like they deserve the support that they're getting.
Great point. And that's where the story of God doesn't keep score came through. Is like, you are unique. You are special. And we need you here, and going to those funerals and seeing the hurt and the why.
Yeah.
My best friend lost his brother in July to skin cancer, and it was awful. But skin cancer took him away, right? And so you fight skin cancer, and you see what he's going through and what happened, and it's difficult. And I feel bad, and I knew this guy very well, and I think your husband knows him pretty well, and I felt awful for my best friend. But the suicide part of that, Dawn, is something awfully different.
Yes.
God, why couldn't I have helped you? What was going on that was so bad that you couldn't stop it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question. Why? What was the moment you pulled the trigger? Why did you have to do that? And so I don't want it to get to that point for people. And I want you to know that you have hope, you have purpose. And if it's that point, please reach out, because I'll tell you how much purpose and hope that you have, because we're all in this together.
For sure.
And we all walk the same way. And that's it. We just got to let people know that we're there and we love them.
Yeah. And that everyone's valuable, and that you not being here creates a large hole. And that your value as a person is what's important. Your value as a person, not what you do.
Yeah. There's a guy, an intern that I had recently. Right. Yeah. And an intern, he's like, man, I want to be you. You've got these Emmy awards and all that. I said, you don't want to be me.
Yeah.
Be here. There's only one you, man. Be yourself. You don't want trust me. You don't want my life.
Yeah.
No. I go to work and I work hard, but I've made massive, crucial, dumb, critical mistakes. You will too, but make your own mistakes and don't look at me like, oh, you're great. No, man, it's a battle we all fight every single day, but we find that grace to get us through and the hope that we have to get better. And people need to know that they have hope, and hope is here. Hope is a prayer. Hope is above. Hope is God. Hope is us. Hope is helping each other out. So I want people to know that.
And it's making that first step. It's not someday. It's not one day. It's day one, like you said.
Correct.
It's day one, and taking that leap of faith that you've talked about through this whole conversation. It's making sure that you know that you're supported. You know that you're valued as a person. You're not what you do and who you serve and all those things, but you are you because you're you. So that creates that value, and just knowing that you have enough value in yourself. I just keep going back to value. That's, for some reason, that's popping up. But I do want to ask you with the effect of that. I know that's something that you want to keep in your toolbox. That's very important to you. What do you see for the rest of this year as we're closing out 2023 for you? What are some of the plans that you have, or some aspirations or goals? What do you want to get to?
I think to continue the mental health, talk to people, talk to guys. I'm very grateful for the job at MTSU football, calling those games, the radio station at 102.5. The game's fun. I do high school football on Fox 17 on Friday nights.
Yes.
I just keep creating the chaos. And I tell people I got like 8 part-time jobs, but I'm happy, and I had a job in the corporate world, which did not make me happy. Great people, I had a fantastic boss, wonderful coworkers. I was just a terrible employee because I couldn't be confined to a cubicle. So I look forward to being really grateful for this opportunity to get back in radio. My book came out, and I looked last night, which is weird, Dawn, on Kindle and comedy and entertainment, my book was number 5.
Ah.
I was right behind Matthew McConaughey.
What?
Which is, in what world does that exist?
That's
right?
amazing. Come on.
So there's McConaughey, and then there's me. And then my book was ahead of Jerry Seinfeld's book the other day, which I don't deserve that. But that's the thing, is that we do deserve that.
You do. So yeah. So as much as you say you don't, you do, because you're you. And I think you found the recipe.
Yeah, we got to believe in ourselves to some point and to some degree. Right.
Uh-huh.
That's it. And so we go out and do it and get things done and write that book, take that journey, do the vacation, write that song, do whatever it takes.
Yes.
Like I read about your podcast. You want to do this for years. Why are you doing it now?
Oh, why am I doing it now? I found the time and I found the faith and the belief to dig in and just give it a shot.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. That's all it takes.
It's day one, not one day.
Right.
I got to day one. Yes.
And look at you, and you're rolling with it. Do it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's rolling for sure. So 10 years from now, where do you see yourself?
Man, that's a great question. Still doing this to some degree.
Okay.
Maybe living on a beach somewhere.
Yeah.
That's probably it, but still going to write. I'm going to try to get a book out every 6 months.
Okay.
Still, still got big dreams. I'd like to run a complete marathon one day. I've done 17 half marathons.
Jeez, Joe, you basically have done a marathon. Let's just string them all together.
Half marathon, yeah. I mean, I've lost 65 pounds in the last year.
Okay.
And it was a thing of just improving your life, healthy wise, and do everything. And it's been fantastic. But again, get off the couch and day one or one day, make it happen.
Day one or one day. I love it. All right. So I want to wrap up our conversation with some rapid fire questions, just because of all people that I've talked to, I think this is going to be some of the best ones. You didn't read any of these, you said.
No, none of them.
So guys, this is total Joe right here. All right. First one. What is your favorite day of the week and why?
Friday, because it always brought me pleasure. Like, here comes the weekend. It's Friday. Everybody just feels good on a Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. Good one. What was your favorite subject in school? That could be high school or college.
History. I did really well in history in all aspects of my life. So I love history and I love trivia on history. I love presidential history. So history is it.
Great. And I think history makes you knowing history makes you a really well-versed, well-rounded person too.
Absolutely does.
What is the stupidest dare that you ever agreed to?
I drink a gallon of milk one time.
Like straight?
Yeah. And you can't digest it that fast. And I threw everything up.
Oh my gosh. It's like projectile all over.
It was awful. I'll never do that again.
How old were you?
It was 36. Because I was a channel 2. It was on air. I didn't do it on air. I did it off air. So it was like 36.
Okay. Hold the phone a second. Yeah, I was thinking you were going to say that you were like a high school junior and your buddies on the team like dared you, or even college dared you to do it.
Somebody had said that if you drink a gallon of milk, you can't digest it, you'll throw it up. And so I did it and threw it up. And I was like, God, you're right. You're right. That's exactly what happens. Terrible.
Oh, God. Everybody, don't drink. Don't guzzle a gallon of milk.
Yeah, don't do it.
It's bad. What would your 12-year-old self say? Or would your 12-year-old self think that you are cool? And what would they say to you?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think be like, because my son thinks I'm extremely popular and famous. Okay. And I'm not. Just because I was on TV and his friend said, I saw your dad on TV.
Yeah.
I think the 12-year-old would be like, hey, you got a cool job. I like that. So I think he would say, you're cool. Yeah, I like what you're doing.
Okay, good. And then final one, what quote resonates with you the most?
Oh, that's a great one. What quote? God, I know this. Hold on. Give me a second. What quote resonates with me the most? Oh, goodness. Damn you, Dawn. Let me think here for a second. Maybe that's the quote.
No. Okay, so we'll refine it a little bit. Or it could be a saying, it could be a mantra, it could be a lesson. Like you said, I think in this conversation, you have dropped all sorts of really great quotes. I mean, day one or one day.
I got it. There's one. There's two. There's one. The Shawshank "Get busy living, get busy dying" is really powerful.
Yes. Love it.
And there's one from a Tom Cruise movie, Days of Thunder.
Okay.
And they won't let him race into the movie because he's got a concussion.
Uh-huh.
And Nicole Kidman is playing the doctor, and she says, "We can't let you race today because what will happen?" And Tom Cruise says to her, "I'm more afraid of being nothing than I am of being hurt."
Oh.
And that's always resonated with me because I think we all want to be something.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to get hurt along the way. So when he said that, I'm more afraid of being nothing. And then and one more real quick was from the movie Cars 3. Don't laugh.
Okay.
Lightning
McQueen, some of those are great.
Makes this great jump, right? Those movies are great. Makes this great jump. And the female car says, "Gosh, how did you know you could make that jump?" And he says, "I never knew that I couldn't." And I was like, oh, that's powerful.
Damn.
How did you know you could make that jump? I never knew that I couldn't.
Yeah. That's belief.
Yep. Yeah.
Fundamental belief.
Exactly.
I love it. Gosh. Well, Joe, it has been a delight talking to you this afternoon. I've always enjoyed getting to banter back and forth with you whenever we see one another, but this is such an invaluable conversation that I believe we just had this afternoon. I appreciate I'm going to say it again, your truth bombs, like drop the mic, because some of them are so, so good. And it's all based on your experience of life, and it's based on your path and your goals and the things that you have worked through to get to where you are now. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. Continue to do that work of mental health, helping and supporting people, because that's such a huge thing for women, but especially for men too. It's, again, we go back to that whole it's just not out there. So bravo to you for taking that on and being a champion for that cause. It's
well,
really,
thank you. Yeah. And then again, find me on my email is bigjoeonthego@gmail.com if you want to talk or reach out. And I'm proud of the men that have done that, because I believe, we're all stronger together. So, and congrats to you for doing the podcast, because you exemplify what I talked about. Just do it. Just find the time and do it. And don't sit around thinking about it. I bet you thought this for years, and now you're doing it and you're making headway. So let that be example to people that come on and see this, to know that you're doing this because you wanted to do it. And there you are.
Yes. Oh, well, I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a great rest of your day. And I'm sure we'll hear you or see you on the television soon.
All right. You bet. Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. If you have an idea for an interview, or you would like to share your own story, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message at dawn@thesoulgoals.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love for you to leave a review and to consider following and subscribing to the show. With weekly releases, there is always another interesting story to be heard. I do hope that today's guests and their words have helped to bring some extra light to your day and encouraged you to find a deeper space of your very own soul goals. Until next time, friends, remember that everyone has a story, and every story matters.